What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL World? How you doing, Division Rivals? This is Steven Hyder, Gate City Sports Media Company. In today's topic, we're talking the 2022 NFL Draft, and we're going to talk about this tight end position. In particular, two players I want to talk about within this 2022 NFL Draft is Jalen Wydermyer from Texas A&M and Trey McBride from Colorado State. These two young men in particular, I think, add a lot of intrigue to the discussion, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I broke down 9 players. Here they are for you. I broke down Jalen Wydermyer. I broke down Trey McBride, Isaiah Likely, Jeremy Ruckert, Cade Otton, Josh Weil, Derrick Deese Jr., Cole Turner, Charlie Kolar, guys. I had a good time breaking these dudes down, man. There's some interesting takeaways from what I saw here from this tight end class. And I want to talk about first, and if you're not an Eagles fan, you get to this later. The tight end number 2 kind of title to this guy kind of plays off of a couple things here. Number 1, internally from the Eagles standpoint, we're probably looking at this more so as a compliment to Dallas Goedert. But from a draft standpoint, this can be taken into a larger discussion to talk about who's the number 1 and who's the number 2 overall ranked tight ends. I will say that going into the 2021 draft, man, I thought that this was a straight layup, man. I thought it was a layup. I thought this was going to be so easy to kind of distinguish who was the number 1 guy. And I thought for sure it would be Jalen Wydermyer from Texas A&M. I thought he had a really good 2020 season. I expected to have a lot out of him in 2021. I'm going to be honest with you. Kind of fell short of my expectations personally. I still think he's a good football player. I'm not taking shots at him in that regard per se. But I will say that he didn't quite live up to what I thought he would be inside this league. Now, in saying that, who's my number 1? I'm going to tell you right from the jump, guys. My number 1 tight end in this 2022 NFL draft class is going to be Trey McBride, Colorado State. And I don't even think it's close, guys. Number 1, when you look at just his receiving grades, guys, 95. He had a 95 overall receiving grade that was given to him. In addition to, sorry, guys, I had a phone call coming in. In addition to that 95 receiving grade, he just doesn't drop passes, guys. He had an 88.7 drop rate, which basically, you flip it the other way, it means he catches pretty much 88.7% of what's kind of coming his way. On the season, he only had 3 drops, and he caught 91 balls for 1,100 yards. Now, I will say the only thing that lacks in Trey McBride's game here is that he's not really an end zone threat. He doesn't really get the ball into the end zone. And I do think that that's a little bit of a concern with Trey McBride. But that said, though, guys, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 255, 260 pounds. I mean, he's built like a tight end. The dude is a really, really good gap blocker. So if we're working in terms of doubling and then working our way up to the second level, Trey McBride is very good at doing that. I mean, he's one of the stronger, suited guys inside this draft class as a zone blocker. I will say that I'm sorry, I said that backwards, guys. He's a gap blocker. So, and this is something that stood out on Trey McBride's film when I talk about gap blocking. So think about gaps mean that you're going to a designated hole to open that hole up. If you go right to some of his early film, I can't remember what game I was watching, guys. I was watching a game recently of his. I think it was the bowl game they just played. And if you watch Trey McBride, you'll see that like one of the first plays they run him on, it's basically an over zone. It's like kind of a cross or an over zone concept to where you're taking him from one side of the formation, crossing him over the other side of formation. It's kind of like a gap kind of assignment type blocking ordeal there. And you can see his athleticism in that. In terms of zone blocking, he's decent. I'm sorry, I mixed up my notes there. He's decent, but I wouldn't say that he's the best in this group at zone blocking. I think there's certainly better guys in terms of working that first interior double up to the second level. I think there's guys that are better than him at that. My bad, guys. I did mix that up about him. I will say that, he played a lot in the slot. He plays a lot in inline. He will play out. They will split him out wide, guys. He had just short of 30 snaps split out wide, but it's not really his game. There's another guy later on we're going to talk about that's more of the out wide kind of split type, person inside this offense. Contested catches, he'll go up there, 16 contested throws, 8 catches, 50% contested catch rate. I'm sorry. I was reading somebody else's. I'm sorry. 32 contested throws, 17 catches for a 53.1% catch rate. My bad, guys. He's definitely a contested catch guy. 17 catches on 32 attempts. Like, they weren't afraid to give him an opportunity to go get the football, and he rewarded them. He played pretty good. He played pretty well, guys. Trey McBride, to me, clearly the number 1 tight end inside of this draft class. Probably going second, early third-ish is what I would probably say here. I don't know that the Eagles will be in play. I don't know how much the Eagles are going to value that. I don't know if we're going to see those returns to 2 tight end personnels the way we used to use them with Doug Peterson. I think we kind of fell into that out of necessity. You know, we had Zach Ertz kind of coming up on a third contract. You know, you get an opportunity to steal a young guy like Dallas Goedert. I think that was just a glimpse in time and an opportunity that presented itself. I don't know that we're going to seek that kind of thing out again, although I do think we'll probably be in the market for a second tight end. But no doubt about it, guys, I thought Trey McBride was by far the best tight end that I watched film of so far in this draft class. I will say one thing about him, guys, is that his average depth of target it's decent. It was 8.6 yards. I don't think he's necessarily the deep vertical guy, though, but he's definitely more the intermediate, medium type game. That's really where he makes his living at here, where he'll make his living at least in the NFL. All right, y'all. So I'll go ahead and let's just talk Jalen Wydermyer. Let's go ahead and get that one out of the way. And then after Jalen Wydermyer, I'll give you guys a couple of guys I think are kind of under the radar. They're under the radar talents, guys that we should keep our eye on, players that might turn out to be pretty good once they get to the league that, you know, kind of maybe the average person doesn't really know too much about them. All right, Jalen Wydermyer. At one point in time, Wydermyer was like the guy. I mean, like I said, I was pretty high on him coming out of the 2020 season. I thought he was going to be really good for Texas A&M this year. I'm not saying he was bad, guys, but he's not a blocker. I mean, gap blocking he was graded out at 44.6. We run a lot of that. You see a lot of that over and cross zone stuff in Philadelphia. A lot of gap blocking in general, crackback, that kind of stuff from the Eagles. And I'm not too sure that Jalen Wydermyer is the best fit for that type of system. So I would be really hesitant to put him in there because I feel like a guy like Jack Stahl might actually beat him out just because you can depend upon him more as a blocker. And, you know, the only thing you're getting from Wydermyer is a little better of a receiving, you know, tight end. So that does concern me. He's a zone blocker. He's average, 56.4 grade. He's okay. You know, he's not horrible. That's certainly not like outstanding numbers at the same time, guys, to be honest. In terms of like what they graded him in terms of his route running, it was a 68.1, which was, I'm going to be honest with you guys, was really low. I expected to see a big advancement here. I thought that he would grade out into more of the 70s or 80s. But if you want to take a positive here, the NFL rated him. The NFL rating was a 93.5. And I do think that they're accounting to some extent for the level of competition, which is why I wouldn't go too far on Wydermyer being down on, you know, like, yeah, he wasn't as good as we thought he was going to be, but he also plays in the best conference in college football. And of course, that's going to affect your, you know, it's going to affect your numbers. Average depth of target was 9.8 yards. So he definitely, you know, he can push the ball down the field for you a little bit, but I would still call that more of an intermediate area receiver. 16 contested throws, 8 contested catches, 50% contested catch rate. He's got a bad problem with the drops, these guys. 8 drops on the season. As a matter of fact, his drop grading was a 40.5. That ain't good, guys. That's like the lowest of anyone that I've graded so far. I mean, it was pretty bad. Now, I will say he's a good yak guy. So, I mean, if you're looking for a yak kind of receiver, tight end, if you will, I do think Wydermyer can play that role, getting you some yak tight end screens, that kind of stuff. I do think he's pretty good at that. So, I mean, there's good and bad with this. I mean, in terms of like how he splits out and how they use them, guys, I mean, they use them a little bit inline. They use them a little bit in the slot. They use them a little out wide. I will say that he's more of a slot and inline guy. He's kind of got that flexibility there. He's not one of these guys that lines up out wide too often, but it's not really his build. I think he's an average prospect, guys. I mean, I see Wydermyer as more of that late third, fourth round. You know, you're banking on potential, could probably play in the league. He's a guy you could develop. You know, I just, you know, I'm not overly huge on him, to be honest. I'll get into one of the first cues of the guys that I think could be really good. There's 3 guys on this list I want to talk to you guys in depth about that I think there's something there. The first one is Coastal Carolina's Isaiah Likely. I like that young individual a lot. The next person is, well, 4 guys, I should say. There's 4 guys. The next guy is Derrick Deese Jr. from San Jose State. Very unique tight end. There's something about him I want to talk to you guys about. He's so unique in what he can do here for an offense. The other guy is Cole Turner, wide receiver from Nevada. And then the last guy is Charlie Kolar. I'm sorry, tight ends, guys. Tight ends. These are only tight ends. Charlie Kolar, tight end from Iowa State. Those 4 guys. So Likely, Deese Jr., Turner, and Kolar. Those 4 guys really intrigued me in this draft class. So let me get into it a little bit here. Isaiah Likely. The first thing that stands out about Isaiah Likely is this is a highly graded route runner. He's a very, very good route runner. He's playing at Coastal Carolina. Of course, we got to consider the level of competition. That's always going to be a concern. This is a guy that, you know, when you can get an opportunity to see him in pro days and, you know, combines, if we have a combine this year, I don't know if he qualifies, guys. I'd have to look up to see if he's a senior. But if he qualifies for the Senior Bowl, some of you guys have been tracking the roster, let me know if Isaiah Likely is on any of the rosters for the Senior Bowl. He's a young man that could definitely benefit from being in those type of situations, going against some of the Power 5 conference guys and putting stuff out there for scouts to see him line up against those type of athletes. Now, what I will say is decent blocker. I mean, I don't think he's great, but I think he's, definitely better than thought. In terms of gap blocking, he's 69.9 grading, which is not bad at all. He's pretty much rounded up to a 70% graded player. That means he's got the athletic ability to run a block, system here. He can play inside of a block running game, blocking scheme. It's kind of hard because you're saying blocking. It's weird there. But yes, when we're talking gap, when he's got a gap blocking assignment and that's where he's got to go to, he's pretty good at doing that stuff, guys. Zone blocking, he's okay. I wouldn't say it's his strength. I do think that he's a little light, 6'4", 240-ish. Sometimes the strength doesn't hold up there on the gap, or not gap, I'm sorry, guys, on the zone blocking concepts, but nonetheless, he's still a good football player. He's a good receiver, guys. He's a really good receiver. Once again, another one of these more inline and slot guys. Wide tight end that sometimes you'll see stand up, play in tight to the formation as a slot. Definitely gives you that, that ability. Contested catches, not really a ton of opportunities. 10 contested throws, 4 contested catches, 40% rate. But I will say that this young man was rated highly. PFS personal grading had him at a 93.3, and the NFL rating had him at 138.6. On the season, he caught over 900 yards, 12 touchdowns. This guy was highly productive at getting into the end zone. He's a guy that, like I said, if he's in the Senior Bowl, and I have to look over the Senior Bowl rosters, but if he's actually a part of the Senior Bowl, intriguing dude to pay attention to and to watch, guys. Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina is someone I would really pay attention to, because if you're looking for a receiving option as a second tight end, someone that can be developed, he is a very, very intriguing guy. The next person, let's get into Derrick Deese Jr. Derrick Deese Jr. comes out of San Jose State. So once again, San Jose State, we're talking about a smaller school, right? I mean, level of competition, that whole stuff, again, guys, absolutely. That's all true. I don't know what to make of it. We have to see, these are guys that if they could get inside the Senior Bowl, you would learn a lot more about them. These are the type of guys I love to watch Senior Bowl practice to see how they're doing, to see how they're stacking up against guys. Kind of built very similarly to Likely. He's about 6'3", 6'4", 235-ish, 240-ish. What I like about Derrick Deese, though, is that Derrick Deese is very unique in the fact that he took over 219 snaps in the slot. He played more in the slot than he did inline or split out wide. He's a very unique type of guy. He's a very, very good zone blocker. This is the best zone blocking tight end inside of this draft class. I mean, he's graded out as an 82. I mean, he's really good at basically getting in on those interior defensive linemen, getting in, not really interior defensive linemen. It's not really the right way of looking at it. It's really edge rushers he's doubling down on. But he's really good at committing to those double teams and climbing to the second level. And you do see that from Derrick Deese Jr.'s film, and I thought he was pretty good at it. Now, I will say that the NFL rating on him was only an 86.4. They were a little down on him. But Derrick Deese Jr., because he played so much from the slot and just what he is and the versatility of this young man, he had the highest average depth of target out of any tight end that we're going to talk about today. 12.7 yards. This young man got targeted down the field a little bit. Really good football player, decent route runner, had a 79.3 receiving value grade, which means that he was a fairly decent route runner. Now, he's not quite to where they graded Likely, and he's certainly not to where they rated guys like Kolar. But he's a decent, really decent route runner. He can actually get open. 17 contested throws, 8 catches, 47.1%. Not really his game, but he can do it in small little windows and small little, kind of shorts here. In terms of the drop rate, he had 69.3 grading, which is, it's okay. I mean, he did drop 4 passes, but he's also being targeted on average, average depth of target 12.7 yards. So I would say that the complexity of those throws can be more difficult at times. With that said, he's an intriguing guy. He's someone that I would definitely keep my eye on. He would be a very unique fit, a very interesting dude to kind of play inside of your offense. It would really be on the creativity of the, your coordinators and stuff like that to work him into your system. Cole Turner, tight end from Nevada. Big guy, big dude. 6'6", 240. The uniqueness of Cole Turner comes from the fact that he gets split out wide, guys. Cole Turner, 131 snaps on the season, split out wide. I mean, they almost use him as he's not Kyle Pitts, guys. He's not that level of an athlete. But they use him Kyle Pitts was one of those guys where they didn't hesitate to split him out wide, playing an inline as a wide tight end or in the slot. They moved him as an F tight end, a Y tight end. They used him almost as a boundary side receiver in Florida's offense. Cole Turner kind of, that kind of domino piece for Nevada, just not the same type of athlete. He's not to, Kyle Pitts' level of athleticism. With that said, big guy, 6'6", 240. He played 283 snaps in the slot, 131 out wide, 74 inline. So I would say that the one critique you could give Cole Turner is that, he's the modern image of a tight end. He's not really that guy that's going to line up in line to the formation on the offense and do anything. That's a guy that might need to be, kind of worked with in that aspect of the game per se, but he definitely is an interesting guy. 110.4 NFL rating, receiving value of 72.6, so slightly above average route runner. But that's, a lot of length, a lot of frame. Not the greatest blocking tight end as you might imagine, guys. Had a 60.4 grading in zone blocking, had a 59.1 grading in gap blocking. He's not the greatest blocking tight end. You'd have to definitely develop him in that regard. But I definitely think he's underrated. I think that he's a unique dude. I think he could be very unique for an offense and what he could offer you and what he could do. All right, my favorite player I want to talk about from this draft class at tight end. So, look, I'm not saying this is the best tight end in the draft class. Like I said, I honestly think Trey McBride is clearly the number one tight end in this draft class. But Charlie Kolar from Iowa State interests me for a lot of reasons. All right? The number one thing that interests me about him is the fact that Charlie Kolar's connection to Iowa State has a connection back to Indianapolis, which has a connection back to our coaching staff in Philadelphia. Stick with me, and I'll work with you on following the dominoes here. Tom Manning. Tom Manning was the tight ends coach in Indianapolis, along with Nick Sirianni as the offensive coordinator. Kevin Patullo was the wide receiver coach. And then eventually Tom Manning, who was the tight end coach, left, went to Iowa State, becomes the offensive coordinator there. So Charlie Kolar playing inside of that Iowa State offense underneath Tom Manning. I got a feeling that Charlie Kolar have a good feel for what Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo want to do with his offense because he's coming here from Tom Manning. So, I mean, to me, I definitely see, the use of a man like this, like a young man like this. 6'6", 260 pounds. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 260. He's a big dude. He's a big guy. Really, really good route runner. 85.5 receiving value grade here. So 85.5, really, really good route runner. Played 239 snaps in the slot, 117 inline, 47 out wide. He's definitely more so of an inline slot, tall guy. He's not quite to like what Cole Turner is for Nevada, where you see him splitting out wide as many snaps, but there's some versatility, there's some use here. I will say Kolar's got to develop a little bit more in the blocking. He's got a 59.3 zone graded blocking rate. He's got a 58.5 gap blocking rate. He's got to get better in terms of the grades there. I mean, he needs to be better in terms of like what he can do inside the running game, in terms of his usage here. But 6'6", 260, a guy that can move around the formation, can play tight, can play inline, can play your slot, can split him out wide if you really need to. He's got the frame. He's a really good route runner. The guy had 27 contested throws and 18 contested catches, a 66.7% contested catch rate. Guys, that's phenomenal. This dude he could be a problem. Only 2 drops on the year. His drop grading is an 86.4. It means he can play, guys. It means that Charlie Kolar is a player, in my opinion. He's got to get better as a blocker. 98.8 NFL ratings, how the NFL rated him from their grading system. But Charlie Kolar, to me, is the one guy I look at in terms of this class, and I say to myself, he gives you something that's unique. Look, like I said, Derrick, Deese, Cole Turner, Charlie Kolar, and then the young man from Coastal Carolina, Likely. I think all of them are unique in their own way. But I think Kolar's connection back to the coaching staff, the ideas and the fit that he might already be somewhat familiar with some of the concepts we run, I think definitely helps out. And, I would love to add a Trey McBride because Trey McBride is a layup. I just don't know if we're going to be surfing for that kind of value at wide receiver 2 as early as McBride's going to get drafted. So, I mean, a guy like Kolar in the 4th, 5th round, I don't know if he's going to last that long, guys. He might be gone by the 3rd round. I'm just saying if you're sitting there in the 4th or 5th round and there's a guy like Charlie Kolar on the board, I mean, I think that's where you take a guy like this. Like, that's where you take the risk and you say, he's not there as a blocker yet. As a receiver, it's there. As a blocker, it ain't there. I'll get him there. We got our own, decent tight end coach. We'll get him there, right? We got familiarity with Tom Manning, so we know we're going to get a really good scouting report on this young man. Charlie Kolar, guys. I mean, that's someone I like a lot. And I'll give you guys some mid-round valuations here before we go to comments. So the mid-round guys, so like the middle-tier players, if you will, I don't think they're anything special. I'll give you my own little insight to each guy and what I think about them, but Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, Code Oden from Washington, and then Josh Weil from Cincinnati. They're all kind of similar in body stature, 6'4" to 6'6". Most of them list about 6'5" guys, 250-ish is about where they come in at. I will say in terms of blocking, your Josh Weil from Cincinnati is an incredibly good gap blocker. So if you're using a guy to come in here for gap schemes, you're using those over and those cross zone concepts, and you're pulling your tight ends. I do think that Josh Weil from Cincinnati is kind of a sneaky pick there. He's got some work to do in his receiving, guys. He's a little raw there in terms of the route running. Graded out as a 66.2, but the NFL rating was much higher on him. The NFL rating was 130.2, and that caught my eye. So the NFL rating was a much higher on him than the scouts were for PFF, if you will. I will say his zone blocking was really bad. Josh Weil only had a 53.6 zone blocking grade, guys. That's a little definitely concerning, right? No doubt about it. He'd have to get better there. Josh Weil would. He's the Cincinnati guy. Contested catches, 8 attempts, 3 catches, 37.3%. That's not really what he is, guys. But, as a guy that you develop on the back end of your roster and can potentially be a long-term tight end too, maybe so. I mean, I don't know how the Eagles feel. Like, the Eagles got to see how they feel about guys that are on this roster. I don't know how they feel about Jack Stahl developing into that. I think Jack Stahl's a really good blocking tight end, but can he develop into more of a receiving option, The young man that tore the ACL, Jackson. Jackson, big, tall guy, gives you all that receiving ability. Former quarterback that Tyree Jackson, that he's going to know where to be in terms of the route progression, in terms of where he's supposed to be at the depth, of his drops, not drops, but his depth of his routes. With that said, the ACL, and when he suffered the ACL injury, it's like the worst timing in the world. Cade Oden, I think, is probably the better overall blocker out of this group. Really good gap blocker as well, 73.9 graded gap blocker. 62.9% zone blocker. I think he's more of the blocking type here. He's an okay. I'd say an average route runner, guys. 60.7 grading there. NFL was not high on Cade Oden at all. Their NFL rating on him was a 49.6. And I think the reason they're accounting for that is he was very much a dump-off guy. 6.4 average depth of target. Not very good. It's not a very good number, guys. He was not being targeted down the field at all here. I'll say with Washington. A little bit of a dropsy problem too. 2 drops on the season. They gave him a 71 grading, but when you look at how much he was targeted, 2 drops is kind of a big deal. He's more of an inline Y tight end type. Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, 6'5", 250 guy. He's an okay blocker, 60.9 gap blocking, kind of lacks a little bit of the athleticism. Zone blocking, 66.7, a little bit stronger, a little bit better at holding up at the gap, or on the zone stuff. I'm sorry, guys. So doubling up on that edge and then climbing up to the second level. He's pretty good at that. Good, dependable hands, guys. He's got really good handling. 1 drop. Grading him out as an 80% on the drop rate, meaning basically flip it around and you can see kind of what they're saying. He's a really good receiver, too. 227 inline snaps, 172 slot snaps, 43 out wide. Gives you a little flexibility in what you can do with him in terms of alignment. 105.6 NFL rating. I do like Jeremy Ruckert as kind of like a sneaky pick, right? Ohio State, big school, played against adequate competition. Is there some versatility there? Probably not the greatest athlete of these guys we're going to talk about, but look, you got to give guys a chance too, because he might surprise you when you get the combine numbers, when you see him out there. So, but I mean, I would suspect that he's not the greatest lateral mover. Maybe he's got some frontline speed. We'll have to see how he tests in terms of like the straight ahead speed, the 40 numbers, but his lateral movements, and you can see that kind of reflected in his gap blocking and stuff like that, to where moving laterally, he's not quite the same player, guys. But that's pretty much how I graded out this tight end. It's 9 guys. There's more guys to grade. Don't get me wrong, guys, but it's a lot of people to break down film on, guys. It's a lot to take notes on. It's a lot to talk about. Let's get to some comments, guys, and let's see what you guys think here. What's up, Troy? How you doing, buddy? Doing good this morning, man. What's up, Russell Morris? How you doing, man? It says, nice. I mentioned last week I think tight end is a need. Nice to see you talking about it. Well, we're doing every position group, guys. Every position group. We did the entire defense last week. We're doing the entire offense this week, guys. What's up, NFC East Beast? He said, good morning, Gates Gorillas. Cree said, good morning, Coach Gates. Greeting, Eagles Nation. Fly, Eagles, fly. Good morning, Cree. How you doing, buddy? Blocking, lanky tight end, expose the linebackers and corners. But, Coach, is that the most glaring need? The permanent loss of Brandon, no linebacker, suspect defense. I'm not sure a tight end is it's still a need. Tight end 2 is still a need on this team, Ken. Is it the most pressing need? No, but there's no tight end that's going to be a first-round, evaluation. You might look at a couple of guys that could sneak up potentially into the second round. I do think that a player, like I'll say guys like, Trey McBride could sneak up on you in the second round and be a top 50 pick. But the rest of these guys, they're not that high up. What's up, Sam? How you doing, buddy? He said, good morning, coach. I'd be happy to see McBride in Philly. I can't help but root for a Colorado State guy from my state on my favorite team. He pops on tape and his draft status will help Colorado State long-term. I hear you, man. I homer for NC State all the time. Chaos the Filthy. What's good, bro? He said, I want Ertz back next year on a 2-year deal. Retire as an Eagle, all-time great. Nah, you got to let some guys go, man. I love Ertz. I'd love to sign Ertz back one day to retire as an Eagle, but not on a 2-year deal, guys. I don't think that's what we need to head in the direction of. NSCSB said, doesn't evaluating tight ends feel like a futile operation? At some point, I may check out late day three undrafted rookie free agent guys. Sorry, guys, because I don't expect the Eagles to look at any until then. We didn't expect them to take Dallas Goedert when they did either, though, NFC East Beast. We got to be careful with that stuff. There is a clear need for a tight end, too, on this team. What's up, Show Enough? How you doing, man? Under the radar guys in later rounds is what I'm more interested in, coach. Blocking, lanky tight end with hands, very important touch. Raw, we can coach that. We can't coach lanky. We can't coach block. Put him on the stretch machine, man. Isaiah Likely is on the Senior Bowl roster. That's awesome, Creed. That's good. So that's a guy, if you have an opportunity to watch the Senior Bowl, I would watch how Isaiah Likely stacks up, especially in blocking drills, because that's going to be the thing that rises or depletes a guy's stock from these smaller schools, right? I don't think your ability to catch the football has got anything to do with where you're playing. Like, yes, I mean, you're going to face better corners. You might have, but if you're a 6'6" guy or 6'5" guy, there's not a whole lot of corners that are going to stick with you, right? With that said, seeing how he holds up against defensive ends from the Power 5 conferences and seeing him block, I do think that kind of stuff matters, man. What's up, Dante? How you doing, man? Cree said these are the tight ends that are listed on the Senior Bowl roster. Coastal Carolina's Isaiah Likely, SMU's Grant. I have no clue how to say that man's name. San Diego State's Daniel Bellinger and UCLA's Greg Dulcich. Isaiah Likely is the only one on that list so far that has caught my attention, but I will take a look at the other guys to just see kind of what they are. Sam said, I thought it was very appropriate that the Falcons traded Julio after drafting Pitts. Pitts is basically a bigger version of Julio. He strikes me as more of a natural wide receiver than a true tight end. Cree said, these are the tight ends listed for the other teams. Colorado State's Trey McBride. Trey McBride's another one that I think he's going to do well anyways. But Iowa State's Kolar. Kolar's the one to keep an eye on. I think he's going to be really good. Cole Turner from Nevada is definitely someone to keep your eye on, guys. Jeremy Rucker in Wisconsin's Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson, I started watching this film on, guys, but I didn't get far enough into it to add him into today's video. But when we do player breakdowns, he'll be part of the player breakdowns. One above all said, morning, coach. Let's ding into tight ends. Okay, that didn't sound right. Cree said, these are the tight ends. Okay, yeah, this one double posted on you, buddy. Gate ACLs are around 6 months recovery, so he will miss some camp, but not everything. Right, but when you're trying to project a guy who didn't give you a lot on the field and already suffered injury that kept him out, that complicates that analysis, Natiro. I don't know that you can wait on that. And it's unfortunate because if you could get him in your offseason programs, you would have had a much better understanding of him. He would have stood a much better chance. But because you're not going to get that opportunity, it kind of changes things, to be honest. And I wouldn't say it's a 6-month recovery. It depends on the person, Natiro, and it depends upon the actual damage done to the knee. It can vary greatly depending upon circumstance. Rock the Artist said, what's up, Gate? I'm doing good, man. How y'all doing? One above all said, big Goddard fan since he came on my radar as a senior. I think we should lessen his blocking and let him be more of a pass catcher. You see Dan Bellinger as an option? I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. It's hard to say who the options are or not right yet, guys. But I definitely like the fact that some of you guys are going deeper in the analysis of who you want. You're not doing every position group, shaking my head. Guarantee you will not run film on punters and kickers and long snappers. Coming up, man, week 3. Punters are going to be Monday. Kickers, and I'm joking, Jalen. I'm not doing all that. If I'm wrong, I'll eat my hat. No, I'm not doing punters, kickers, and long snappers, guys. Number one, I'm not the most qualified guy to even get into that. But number 2, there's just not enough interest in it. Red Eagle, what's up, buddy? He said, I like Isaiah Likely because of his speed, but interesting how you see Kolar in the offense. Yeah, I like Kolar a lot just because of the connection back to Tom Manning and the physical size of this young man. 6'6", 260. He's an interesting guy. Then I really like Isaiah Likely, the fact that guy he went off on guys, man. He was a touchdown machine at Coastal Carolina. I'm really interested to see him in the Senior Bowl if they do any kind of red zone drills. I want to see what he does in those red zone drills because he's not like a tall guy. I mean, he's like, I don't know, 6'3", 6'4"-ish. He's just got really good body positioning. He said, I think Dan Bellinger is known as a monster as a blocker, but can he develop as a pass catcher? If you watch him, love to see your thoughts. Yeah, I think the difficult part with some of these guys, one above all, is trying to project how the Eagles view dudes that are on the team, right? Like Jack Stahl. Jack Stahl's a really good blocking tight end, but he showed some ability in preseason and in camp to catch the football. Didn't really show us a ton in season when it mattered. So it's kind of like how do you really grade that? Like how do you judge their interest? I don't think any of these guys, like I said, I like Tyree Jackson a lot. I think Tyree Jackson's a very intriguing player, but the ACL injury really, really complicated things for Tyree Jackson, unfortunately. In saying that, I just don't think these guys preclude you from taking dudes on day 3. I definitely think if you're sitting there in a 4th round and some of these dudes start to fall, you get a guy like a Charlie Kolar falls down the board in the 4th round and you're sitting there. If that's the best player on your board, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you can't use a tight end too in this team. Antonio Holmes said, man, I'm late. Off topic. Josh Sweat is in the Pro Bowl replacing Bosa. That's pretty cool. I mean, I don't really follow the Pro Bowl like that too much, guys, but I mean, it's a nice little nod for him as a young player, to finally get that kind of recognition. It's definitely a good thing for him, man. I'm sorry, man. I didn't really get into Dan Bellinger. I will let you know one above all. My bad, man. I'll let you know what I think about Dan Bellinger when I get around to him. I'm definitely going to do a write-up on those guys, so just pay attention to the website, guys. I'll post the links as we start writing the articles for each player. Sam Shady Sports said, I think punters would be a great topic after the way Sippos closed the season, but I'm a nerd. Yeah, I don't think there'd be too many people interested in the punter game, though, man. Troy said, Gate, why aren't you working with the scouting department, especially the Eagles? It's really difficult to get involved in scouting, guys. I mean, I've had a couple of runs at the collegiate level, FCS level. The problem is when there's a lot of politics involved with this kind of stuff, guys. It's really a matter of who you make connections with, how you network, and who you get to meet and who you get to know. Sometimes you get lucky and like organizations will reach out to you. Some of the major players like Blesto and those guys that do these advanced scouting, they do work for like the NFL Scouting Combine. They set up all the data. They might reach out to you and ask you to go look at some stuff. College and universities, their regional scouts will reach out to you to say, hey, I'm in charge of this region. Can you do me a favor? Can you go down here, look at this roster, tell me what you think, send me some notes. Like, you can get involved like that, guys, but it's really difficult to climb up to the ranks of the NFL, guys. You need a lot of connections to be able to do that. And I'm not too sure that I've heard of too many guys without a lot of years in the game or an incredible network. You would need a really strong network to be able to do that. NFC East B said a late day 3 guy is Noah Ginderoff of North Dakota State. Haven't really crossed my radar yet, NFC Beast. I can't really speak on what I think of what he is. I mean, I will say that there's some other guys on this list that are, like I said, Ruckert gives me, I like what I saw a little bit from him. I'm not sure of the athleticism of Ruckert. I want to see his numbers. But, I mean, Ruckert's okay. Josh Weil, I can see if you're really into that gap blocking element of what's going on. Like, he gives you that athleticism. Decent sized guy. He's one of these 6'5", 6'6" guys. He's a little light. I'd be afraid of leaving him in line and getting pushed around a little bit. But, guys can strengthen their body. They can get a little stronger the next level. He played a lot of inline at Cincinnati, but Cincinnati kept his snaps down, guys. I mean, he was under 300 snaps, to be honest, on the season. Not the greatest contested catch guy in Josh Wiley either, though. I just think that, you got to define what it is you want. And then, I think there are certain guys, like I said, in my opinion, if you get a guy like Jeremy Ruckert kind of slips down to you, I could see the Eagles going after Jeremy Ruckert. I think if a Derrick Deese Jr. or Cole Turner or Charlie Kolar, those type of guys kind of end up in the fourth, some of those guys in the fifth round. If those kind of guys slide into that area and those are the best player on your board, there's still a need at tight end too. I could see the Eagles kind of taking chances there. I could absolutely see them like going and doing something like that. Since I won our bet, can you make a video of 3 scenarios of full offseason moves from pre-draft trades with realistic values and fit for our players, free agency, and first 3 rounds of the draft? Wow. Yeah, Jalen, absolutely. Let me write that down though, man, because you asked a lot there, man. So hang on. So you want me to make a video with 3? Okay, video, 3 scenarios. All right, so the scenarios are what? Pre-draft trades. So scenario number 1 is pre-draft trades. Okay, scenario number 2 is free agency. And then scenario 3 was what, Jalen? Oh, first 3 rounds. Okay, first 3 rounds of the draft. And then what was the criteria you wanted to be? Realistic values and fit. Okay. Realistic values and fit. I can do that. Do you want that in one video, Jalen, or do you want that in 3 separate videos? Because those are kind of separate topics in themselves. I mean, I can combine them into one video and just kind of make a, kind of like shorter version, condensed version of those points. I could definitely do that. But it might be better as a 3 video kind of component there for each of those topics that you're talking about. I'll be honest with you, Jalen, I'm kind of waiting on them to make a decision here with Jonathan Gannon, because it's really hard to project what they might do defensively if I don't even know if Jonathan Gannon is going to be returning, because the Texans are like, I don't know what's going on with the Texans, bro. Like, I don't understand how you're still searching. I mean, like, make a choice. Like, what the heck? Brady calls it on Twitter 5 minutes ago. Crease, I know how you feel about mock drafts, but I've seen one where the Eagles select Cole Turner, tight end, Nevada, in the 5th round. Do you think he will last that long? Is that good value, the 5th round? Yeah, I think it's appropriate value. 4th to 5th round is where I would probably put him in this pre-draft process, guys. I'd say he's a 4th to 5th rounder. Cole Turner's a big dude. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. He's, a gigantic guy coming out of Nevada. Lined up all over the place, guys. He split out wide, 131 snaps out wide, played in line, 283 snaps in the slot, not in line. My bad, guys. And then in line, 74 snaps. Like I said, the question with Turner is they don't play him a lot in line. He's light, 6'6", 240. He's a little light. I say that thinking, generally speaking, a guy that's 6'6", 240 is not light in the real world, but in the NFL, that's a little light for the height. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we would have to look at that. I mean, sometimes a guy just doesn't have a ton of opportunity, and he might really be a nasty kind of blocker, and you got to give him a chance to see how you would fit him and see how they do. I do worry about his grading, though, man. Look, 59.1 gap blocking. And then you look at zone blocking, it's 60.4. I will say sometimes it's a complex situation to where they might just be better one-on-one blockers. I'll give you an example. The overall grading on Charlie Kolar was a 69.3. That tells me he was pretty good on one-on-one blocking, right? Because in terms of his gap blocking, he was rated a 58.5 grade and a 59.3 in zone blocking. So clearly the one-on-one blocks must have been where he elevated the grades. You know what I mean? When you look at a guy like Charlie Kolar. So with Cole Turner, he's not playing a lot in line. I see where they're going. He's a big red zone target. I just look at a guy like Cole Turner, and I say, like, how do the Eagles feel about Tyree Jackson? I mean, Tyree Jackson played a lot in line once we got in the season, but I definitely think you could play Tyree Jackson split out as a wide receiver. I think you could split him outside. I'm not saying as a wide receiver, but you can line him up outside like a wide receiver is what I'm saying, guys. Cole Turner gives you that same kind of, capabilities. 30 throws, 17 contested catches, 56.7 rate. I mean, he can definitely pull the ball down. 3 drops on the year, 80.5 drop rate. He's got very, very solid hands, so he doesn't drop a lot of passes. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good pick, guys. I definitely think that's a really good pick. So Jalen said 3 videos, 1 scenario each. Each video has pre-draft trades, free agency, and the first 3 rounds of the draft. The realistic aspect I'm talking about is the cap and vision of setting up for the future. Okay, so let me add. Okay. All right. Add in cap implications. Okay, so 3 videos, 1 scenario each. Each video has a pre-draft trade, a free agency, and first 3 rounds of the draft. The realistic aspect I'm talking about is the cap and vision of setting up. Okay, so do you want 3 videos where, like, video 1 is talking about the pre-draft trades, like what trades the Eagles might make, scenarios, how it fits the cap? Or do you want me to do pre-draft trade is the focus, but then also list what they might do subsequent past that in terms of free agency and subsequent past that in the first 3 rounds of the draft? And then the second video would be more focused on free agency, but then you're also going back and talking about the pre-draft trades you may or may not make, and then the first 3 rounds of the draft. And then the third video, the focus would be the first 3 rounds of the draft, but it's in the context of what you've done in the pre-draft situation for trades and what you've done in terms of free agency. Is that what you're basically asking for, Jalen? Brady calls it a career. Liz City Lambo says he likes Trey McBride. I like Trey McBride too. I think he's the best tight end in this draft class, but I think he's definitely probably not going to be in reach for the Eagles. Think Madden offseason real rebuild. Okay, yeah, I could do something like that, Jalen. Yeah, I'll put that together. Probably starting next week, we can definitely do some stuff like that because we'll have that time. We're going to have that situation where we're going to be doing a lot of videos that are going to center around like interesting topics. So we're going to be doing a lot of player profiles. So definitely would probably make sense to start releasing big boards, stuff like that, how I kind of see some of these guys fitting. I'll probably start off with 150. The first big board will probably be 150. I'll probably start off with what I think are the 150 best players in the draft class. That's because I think it's a little easier to arrange your big board in terms of 150. When you take it all the way out and you extend it to 300, that's where you got to go deep in your analysis because most teams don't have 300 guys on their board. Most teams have between 50 to 75 guys on a board. Chaos the Filthy said we need a great O-line and D-line. That's the recipe for success. It definitely helps, man. There's no doubt about it. I mean, as much talk as Joe Burrow has gotten for Cincinnati and Jamar Chase, and those guys played really well, and they deserve credit, and they deserve to be talked about in a positive light. But I got to be honest with you, man. Kendricks and those dudes on the defensive line, hey, man, they're a big reason why Cincinnati was able to make why Cincinnati was able to make Patrick Mahomes very uncomfortable. And we've seen this now. We have seen that when Patrick Mahomes is uncomfortable, he's not the same quarterback. Now, completely different ways of achieving that objective, right? Tampa Bay last year in the Super Bowl just brought the house. You know how Todd Bowles is. Todd Bowles is just seek and destroy. And then we seen last week they were dropping 8 in the coverage and just beating you with 4 pass rushers. So I definitely agree that the O-line and the D-line is very, very important to success. No doubt about it, guys. All right, y'all, let me know. Do you guys got any questions on this tight end group? Who is your guys' who's your favorite tight end from this group, guys? Who do you have? Like, who's that guy you look to and you say, like, okay, like this guy is he's going to be the guy eventually here. Like he's the best player in this draft class, if you will. Real quick, while you guys are chiming in with some comments, I did get the 5-panel hats in, the Gate City Sports logo on the top. Everything's kind of linked down below for how to get this kind of stuff. Also, for you guys that did purchase the quarterback tracking guide, y'all can do me a huge favor if you made the purchase. Guys, do me a favor. When you get it, look through it and then leave a review on it, guys, because reviews on Amazon, I'm just telling you, someone who has an Amazon account that they sell on, like reviews drive stores. It's really the review. So if you guys can leave a review if you purchased it, man, it's going to help a lot, guys. So if you guys can leave a review on the purchase of the book, guys, I would really appreciate it because That's what really helps to get it out there to people. Because if not, then you got to spend a tremendous amount of money on advertising, which it's a tricky game. It's a tricky game. All right, guys. So I'll say that Derrick Deese Jr. from San Jose State, that's the guy that really intrigues me. At 6'4", 6'3", 235-ish, the way he was used in the slot and what they did with him. I mean, yeah, he's not a contested catch guy, but at the same time, like, I would be really excited to see what the Eagles could do here. Like I said, I really love Charlie Kolar. Charlie Kolar from Iowa State makes a ton of sense to me. You know, the connections back with Tom Manning and the coaching staff, you know, the way that they use him, his contested catch ability, you know, him and Cole Turner are just really good contested catch guys. And then you look at a guy who's not quite the same frame. Isaiah Likely is not the same frame, but the dude, all he does is catch touchdowns. Those guys really, really do intrigue me, those four players in particular. I am kind of curious to see what they do there. Lit City Lambo said, we need depth. I don't want us to put all of our chips into a QB or one side of the ball. I hear you. That's why I always say I keep trying to build with people if I can. I think we're good with Stahl. I'd scrap the Jackson experiment and move him back to quarterback. He has a cannon. I think it's a waste to draft a depth tight end, use the picks on defense and O-line. I don't know, Michael. I still think you need a wide receiver too, man. If Goddard goes down, Jack Stahl's your number one tight end. You're very limited to what you can do. Goddard has missed time. I think that people are underestimating how important a tight end 2 is to this offense. Lit City said, I would love to bring in a Jabril Peppers and maybe a wide receiver. Jabril Peppers can't cover, though, man. He's just not a coverage guy. I mean, you're basically bringing him in to play linebacker. You know what I mean? He's as a safety, he just can't cover. He gets beat so much on the back end of coverage. Like, I'm not overly like confident in a guy like Jabril Peppers. I think there are better alternatives, honestly. Trey, one above all, said Trey is the clear number one. Love Cole movement skills, but he feels like another Goddard. Ferguson was interesting, but think he has a red flag on him. I don't know. I don't know in terms of like his like what they flagged him for per se. Like Cole Turner, I think is very interesting, but like he's not a. I don't think he's a Goddard type. Goddard was a far better blocker. Like this guy is not quite. He's not quite Goddard in the blocking game. You can see the fact that, you know, they only lined him up in line 74 snaps. Like he's definitely more of the receiving element. You know, split him out wide, 131 snaps, put him in the slot at 283 snaps. You know, he's under 100 snaps in line as a tight end. I think the problem you run into with a guy like Cole Turner is that unless you can develop this guy in terms of being able to play in line, you get a little predictable with what you're doing on the field, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're in the red zone, Cole Turner gives you a ton of you know, versatility. You know, the guy's got a 6'6", 240-pound frame with a 56.7% contested catch rate on 30, you know, throws and 17 receptions, like 110.4 NFL rating, average depth of target 10 yards, 10.3 yards. Like I definitely think he's an intriguing prospect. I would say that he's a little similar to Tyree Jackson, though. The difference is Tyree Jackson at least had a year in the system to where they were trying to play him in line. They were trying to see what he could do for you in line. You know, he's definitely a willing blocker. I mean, you know, I got to give Tyree Jackson credit because he was very, very much willing to put his, helmet on a guy and try to push. I mean, I thought he was at least an effort guy. Mad Hatter said, why would Kenny Pickett refuse his hand measurement at the Senior Bowl? He has some kind of double jointed thumb, so where he has to do exercises to straighten his thumb. That's what he said, at least. One above all said, I'm big on Jackson, but his injuries scare me now, and I'm iffy on Stahl. Yeah, Stahl's a really good blocking tight end. I don't know what his receiving abilities are. Still has to kind of prove that to us, to be honest. Tyree Jackson, tremendous talent. But, yeah, I mean, he had the back injury. Then he ended with the ACL. He didn't play that many snaps before he suffered the injuries. I mean, it's concerning. There's no doubt about it, even though the talent is there. Like, the underlying talent is there. There's no doubt about that. So Jalen said, example, Isaac gets traded for a fourth. We sign X safety, Y wide receiver, and a Z linebacker. In the draft, we get a guard, a third in addition. Oh, you're talking about, I got you. You're talking about true scenarios, Jalen. I got you. You want me to do 3 separate videos with 3 separate outcomes depending upon subsequent moves. I got you, man. I got you. NFC East B said it depends on who is the quarterback. Hurts, big blocking tight end, one of the trade target throwing quarterbacks, a catching and blocking tight end. Well, I mean, I could kind of see that argument in NFC East Beast, but I still think you got to play to the overall, like, what's needed for the team. You need a tight end too. You need somebody who can, give you some chance of ability here of stepping in case of Goddard's injured. You could go on the veteran, you can go the veteran route. I don't think Zach Ertz is probably the smartest idea unless the money makes sense, because I think when you bring in a guy of Zach Ertz's caliber, you're kind of forcing the coach's hand going back into being a dominant 12 personnel team again in terms of your receiving core, because Ertz is not a particularly good blocking tight end. He's a willing blocker, but that's not his game. That's what I said. If you guys remember, when Ertz got traded, I made a video saying, I wonder if this hints towards the Eagles being a more run-dominant team, because Jack Stahl was a run-blocking tight end. Tyree Jackson gave you a ton of effort. He's very talented, but he's very raw in the route running still. He's still learning it, although I think he's got a good feel for where to cut the depth of the route off at, because he's a former quarterback. So I think he understands sitting down inside of zones and stuff like that. And he's a big target, 6'7" guy. But I definitely think that, it just depends on what they're trying to do here. I mean, I kind of get your point, but at the same time, I would say that we could definitely use a guy that would give you some versatility in the red zone. Although I will say, I don't think they go to Goddard enough in the red zone. I think it's a huge mistake not utilizing Goddard more in the red zone. One above all says, when I say Goddard for Coles, I meant as a receiver. Remember, none of us knew if Dallas could block because he never did it in college. Yeah, but he was, at least you could look to him and see how physically he was. Coles is not built the same way, one above all. He's not. He's a little bit more lankier. Like Goddard's a little bit more put together, Now, I will say, Turner's also kind of in that offense to where there's not a ton of opportunities to block. It's similar with that when it comes to Cole Turner, in that, playing with Nevada and Carson Strong, the opportunities to block are not as great as other systems. But, I mean, we'll see how they do. Is O.J. Howard under contract in Tampa? I'm not sure, Lit City. I'm not positive on that one. Said I want Jabril to play in the box and help out our linebackers. Just like the energy he brings. As long as he's not on the back 7 trying to cover, man, because he's a liability in coverage. What's up, Caleb? How you doing, man? Please, let's leave Ertz alone. It's over. He stinks as a blocker, and he will hurt our run game. Don't let nostalgia blind you. Yeah, I mean, signing Ertz back to contract to retire is one thing, but I wouldn't sign him back to like a 2-year deal. I mean, my concern with Ertz is that it reshifts the focus of your offense. Let's get up soon, Steve. Yeah, guys, I definitely want to do some videos, Caleb. I want to work on getting you guys some film on a few guys, and I want to do some videos. I'm going to try to sit down this week, Caleb, and I want to pull either some pass pro stuff to look at or pull some screen games from the Eagles, and we can do some film breakdown on that. What are the 3 to 5 prospects who are considered elite generational besides offensive line and Hamilton? I mean, the next place to go is defensive line, Jalen. But I think you're probably saying the O-line and D-line in general. I think that's kind of tough because you're kind of removing a lot of guys. But Treylon Burks, I think, has the attributes to be elite. Very fast, very fluid, very big, very strong. He gained separation as a big guy, and that's always important to see. And he played in the SEC, which to me that's always something you keep your head on. When I first started watching the film, Jalen, I thought he was going to be one of these guys that runs high, doesn't sink his hips well, just a typical physical guy. And as soon as I turned the film on, I saw that interpretation was really wrong, and that he is very fluid in his hips, and he does create separation at the top of route stems. He's a crazy good yak receiver. He's not the contested catch guy that people think he is. He's not this guy that you just throw down the fade route in the corner of the end zone. It's not his game. There's more Deebo Samuel to him than I'll say like Mike Williams. Mike Williams was a phenomenal contested catch guy coming out of college. His game's a little different from that type of player. Now, I do think that Treylon Burks, the issue is I do think he has to be in the right system. You're going to need a creative coaching staff. You do not want some traditional-based offense that doesn't know how to use them. But I think that Treylon Burks, when I see him, Jalen, I think he's this combination. He's not quite Deebo Samuels, but he's got the yak ability of like a Deebo. And then I kind of look at him and I look at like Brown up in Tennessee. I think he has the strong catch hands, the strong ability, the rip away from tackles kind of ability. So I think Treylon Burks is one of those guys you got to really watch out for. I could see his stock really climbing after the combine and pro days. The other guy that I'll say to watch out for would be Ahmad Garner stock. I think is really, really going to climb. Ahmad Garner hasn't given up a touchdown his entire collegiate career. The guy's just been straight lockdown. He's a little handsy. He does get grabby a little bit. I think he's going to be good in the NFL still. I still think he's going to be really good in the NFL. Ahmad Garner's a guy that I would definitely say is kind of top of the line there. Trying to say Nakobe Dean, I think, has the elite traits. I think Nakobe Dean has those elite abilities to be really good at the next level. If we're leaving off offensive line and defensive line, let me see. I really hate that Williams tore his ACL because it kind of takes Williams out of the discussion, but Williams has that special ability with the ball in his hands. But coming back from the ACL, you don't know how a guy's going to recover from that. Modern NFL, modern medicine, guys have much favorable outcomes, Jalen, but it's never a guarantee. I like London. I like what USC's been able to do with receivers. These guys have all come out and been pretty good. So I would say that London probably deserves to be in this category, guys that we're talking about. And then the other guy that I think is maybe a little under the radar, because basically what we're talking about is more of the skill position players. I say Kaiir Elam. Kaiir Elam had a fantastic freshman season. If you can get that guy back on track to be anything close to what he was as a freshman at Florida, I definitely think there's some top-end talent to Kaiir Elam. I definitely think he's one of those guys. He said O.J. Howard is a free agent, most underutilized tight end in the league. Yeah, if O.J. Howard's a free agent and the cost is right, you got to factor in cost. I think he's a really good number 2 option. I wouldn't hate that signing at all. Lit City said, I like Tyree and Jack, but I definitely bring in some competition. Yeah, so would I. I don't feel comfortable with either one of those guys if something were to happen to Goddard. Troy said, it's been great listening to you, but I got to go. I got a meeting. I appreciate you tuning in, buddy. NFC's B said Burks might be the first wide receiver taken. I'm high on him too, top 10 guy. That's what I think too, NFC Beast. I think he's probably going to be a top 12 pick. It's hard to project with with wide receivers sometimes. Sometimes they don't quite get to that top 5, 6 type pick status. Sometimes they do. I don't think he's in that kind of consideration. I don't think he's a Jamar Chase type, but I definitely think he's between that 10 to 12 range. The Gambling Hippie said, we do have room on the team for another project tight end like Tyree, or do we need someone more ready to go if we do draft one? Well, I mean, they can do some things with Tyree if he's not 100% back. I mean, they can put him on, the physically unable to perform list. There's a lot of things they can do with him. And then make that decision further down the road what they want to do. I mean, Jack Stahl gives you good blocking. I mean, I don't know if he can catch the ball yet, but I mean, he's been healthy. He stayed in games. He's tough. He's a good blocker. I'll give him that. He said, so besides offensive line and defensive line, what is the strongest position group? I will say that I think that this draft class in particular is still a very good receiver draft class. And I do think that the cornerback position for at least the first 2 rounds, and I would argue even partially into the 3rd round, is going to have good talent. I definitely think that the wide receiver and corner position in this draft class is better than it's been advertised. I think that those 2 positions in particular are pretty good. I think safety is debatable. I'm a little higher on safety than I've seen some people, some analysts say that they are, but I don't think that this is the best safety class in the world. But I definitely think there's some 2nd-round talent at safety in this draft class. And I feel the same way about linebacker. I'm probably slightly higher on linebacker than some of the other analysts are, but I definitely think you can get 2nd and 3rd-round talent at linebacker in this draft class. I think that if you're patient between your 1st and your 3rd round, I definitely think you can walk away with something pretty incredible. Lit City Lambo said, who is the wide receiver from App State that's in the draft? I don't know which one you're referring to. Give me a second. I can tell you. Don't know which one you're referring to. I'd have to look it up, Lit City. I'll look it up. When we get to wide receivers, that's going to be Thursday's video will be wide receivers. Friday's going to be quarterbacks. So I'll look it up and I'll make sure I add them since I know you have interest in them. So wide receiver, App State. I'll make sure I'll look at some film of them tonight. See what I think of them. All right, guys, we've been going in here for an hour. I'm going to stick around for about 15 more minutes. If you guys got any more questions, let me know what you got, guys. Jameson Williams, 1 week after an ACL repair from Dr. James. Rappaport wrote the guy's name. I don't know what his name is. Said he's already ahead of schedule following the clean tear. Yeah, Mad Hatter, you got to be careful with that stuff, though, man, until team doctors tell you. You got to let the team doctors take a look at them. You think Burks, Jameson, Williams go top 15? Not with the ACL tear. I don't know that Jameson Williams is a lock to go 15. I'm not saying that he won't go top 15, Lit City, but I don't know if I'd say it's a lock anymore. I think it's really intriguing to see what they do between London. So Garrett Wilson, London, Treylon Burks, and Williams, I think, are the four names that I hear the most from scouts who think that there's incredible, value and talent with those guys. I don't think those will be the only four receivers taken in the first round, but I think those are the guys that have the best chance of being a top 20 pick in the NFL draft, right? I think those four guys in particular are kind of right there. London, Burks, Williams, and I would say that the young man from Ohio State. Those four guys in particular, not Olave, the other guy. I think those four guys in particular are the ones that seem to be getting the general consensus clouded around them that they're the guy. So would you say it's similar to last year in terms of cornerback talent? If so, which is better? That's an excellent question, Jalen. I think that the overall first round talent in terms of not necessarily the high end stuff, I think it's very argumentative because one of the two big corners from, J.C. Horn got injured. So it's hard to say how that corner class should stack out. But I do think that the overall depth of the guys that's going to go in the first round in this draft is better. But I think the second round guys that were taken from last year's draft were better than the guys that are going to come out of this one. But I still think there's some really good value in the second round at corner in this draft class. I will say the biggest difference, Jalen, is that last year's draft class had a lot of those big, tall, lanky, cover three, reach guys that can really make, windows hard to throw into. This class, I think, is a little bit more of the 6'1" guys with incredible athleticism. We definitely need a quarterback in the late rounds. Any suggestions? We're going to get to that Friday, Ken. I don't want to give away videos, man. But we're going to get to that Friday. We're going to talk about some of the options. The quarterback options are going to go because, 10 guys, we're only talking about 10 to 12 guys when you talk quarterback. So, of course, you're going to be able to go kind of deep into the draft with that. It's obvious how he will draft D-line with one of the picks. You would think. I definitely think that defensive line is going to be in play. I would be careful, though, Natiro. I'm not too sure they're going to use all three of these picks. I'm not sold on them using all three. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it. I'm saying I think the Eagles might be targeting somebody, whether that's a free agent to go trade for and bring into Philadelphia, or whether that's somebody in this draft class. I think they're going to move two of those picks for somebody. That's the feeling I get. So I think they're going to walk away with two picks in the first round. I got you, bro. I knew you said picks, man. It's all good. Same gate. Hamilton is the only safety in the draft I want. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like the safeties. I'm probably not as high on safeties as some people, but I'm higher on linebackers than others. I do think that there's some talent in the second round at the safety. So if you miss on Hamilton, I do think if you're the Eagles, you could stay patient if you really need a safety in the second round. I feel like you're going to get somebody that's decent. I almost feel like the Eagles really should consider trying to get up higher in the third round and target a linebacker, especially if we don't finally draft a linebacker in the first round. I feel like the Eagles need to be a little bit more aggressive. I would go up and move up and go after a Muma or somebody in the third round. I wouldn't play around and try to wait for the board to drop down to me in the third round. Yeah, Garrett Wilson, Michael Irvin, is a poor man's Jamar Chase. From his build to his play style, if he somehow falls to us, he could be another Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver. How he skips over, laugh out loud. I hope he doesn't, Michael. I don't think he will. I would think that deep down, the scouting department and the Eagles realizes that Garrett Wilson's a really good football player. He said, "Thanks, Coach. Great job." Yeah, we're gonna get into it Friday, Ken. I'm gonna give you my first round valuations, and I'll talk about I think the second round is going to be sneaky to kind of predict this year, because I do think that there's some guys that might have guys trade up into the first round and overdraft them, Ken. But I also think there's this group of guys that could potentially end up in the second round, and it's second round quarterbacks are so difficult because you're up against it on the contract. That's really the issue. It's the contract. You look at Derrick Carr, you look at Kirk Cousins. They're not necessarily second round guys, but the concept of a 4-year contract with a quarterback you start playing with. Both of those guys don't have to be franchise tag. Luckily the Raiders had Derrick Carr, and my understanding is Derrick Carr took a pay cut in his contract, not necessarily pay cut, but he took less money in his contract to try to build a team around him when he probably could have caused them to basically franchise tag him too. We're going to get into it, man. Sam Howell, and I'll give you a couple of names, Ken. Sam Howell and a couple of these guys are going to force organizations. Malik Willis, Sam Howell, they're going to force organizations into some very difficult decisions, I think, from pick 16 to 32 on what you do about these quarterbacks. Do you move up from the early second round and come after somebody? I definitely think it's going to get interesting around those picks. He said, I maybe missed a video, but what are your thoughts on Cam Thomas, the defensive end? I mean, look, he's a decent player. I have to go back. I think we talked defensive ends. Give me 1 second, one above all, and I'll try to run it through my head. I think we talked defensive ends either Wednesday or Thursday, I thought was the defensive end video. So if you go back to Wednesday and Thursday, you can see the defensive end video where we went in depth about it all. I want to say it was Wednesday or Thursday. There, you'll see a better scouting report on it. What's up, Shakur? How you doing? So what's good, Gate City? Would we take a chance on Mathieu from Kansas City or get a young safety in the draft? That's a great question, to be honest. Mathieu, I think, is going to come down to how much he's going to cost. The Honey Badger's a really great player. I'd love to have him in Philadelphia. I think he's an impact player, and he's certainly a step up of what we've had recently here. Would the Eagles push for a player like that? Hard to say. I will say that I had the feeling that the Eagles are going to probably go get a safety in free agency, Shakur, but that's kind of like Jalen Williams wants me to make a video where I talk about trades, pre-draft trades, free agency signings, and the draft, the first 3 rounds. Hey, Jalen, when you say the first 3 rounds of the draft, while we're talking here with Shakur, when you say first 3 rounds of the draft, do you want me to simulate the draft and show you what I would do if the board started to fall the way they were falling? Let me know, because we could probably make that into a live stream. Dwayne Edmonds said Sterling Weatherford in the second round or Jaquan Brisker. Hard to say, man. Jaquan Brisker, I think, is a good player. I think it depends upon what you do in free agency, Dwayne. I mean, I would probably go Jaquan Brisker currently, but they're both good football players. There are plenty of good safeties in this draft, and we need one of them. Petrie, Brisker, Kirby Joseph looks interesting. The only problem I have with Kirby Joseph is we're basing it based upon one season. He played a lot in his freshman year, wasn't nowhere near as productive, wasn't really a player the following year, and then he had this crazy off the charts production at Illinois. He had a really good season, but it is a 1-season sample size, and I'm a little concerned about that. Petrie, the young man from Baylor, he's interesting to me. That's a very interesting player. That's a guy in the 3rd round, I think, from a safety standpoint. So you go linebacker 1st or 2nd round, and you're kind of hovering around. Petrie in the 3rd round, I think, is really good value. That's someone I would be interested in. NSC's B said, I've been told I need to watch Christian Watson, wide receiver. He's a FCS guy, another North Dakota State guy. Yeah, I mean, big guy, 6'5", 210-ish. He's definitely kind of that big, lanky type receiver. hard to say. Like, we're coming up on that. Like, all this stuff's going to be coming up really soon. MC's Beast. Hard to say exactly where he fits in the mold of these dudes, but if you're high on a guy like London and you just can't get in position to draft him, if you're an organization, I think you can look at like a guy like, I don't think Justin Ross is the same explosion, but frame wise, yeah, he makes a ton of sense. And then you look at a guy like Christian Watson. I think those type of guys, you can kind of like have those subsequent round guys to back yourself up with like plan B and C. But I will say that I'm curious if Justin Ross, I'm wondering if Justin Ross maybe can't borrow a play out of Boyd's book from Cincinnati and maybe bounce inside as a tall slot with that just kind of, initial quickness he has and burst and be something there. I do wonder that about Justin Ross, and maybe he would be a good fit for that. Yeah, I appreciate the question, Shakur. We're going to get into like into safeties. Like the safety position is definitely kind of a strange one. I definitely think the Eagles need to upgrade safety, and I think Mathieu is clearly, the Honey Badger is clearly a big advancement over everybody else we got on the roster. Like it's a hands down an advancement. But the young man from New Orleans is another really good football player. Bates out of Cincinnati, man, I don't know how Cincinnati lets him walk out the door. But if he ends up walking out the door, I mean, we saw what he could do just a couple of nights ago. He played pretty well. The young man Reed from the Texans didn't have the greatest underlying analytic numbers, but the overall skill set in terms of like 4.4 40 safety. You're pairing that guy with the type of athleticism you get from a guy like Marcus Epps. I mean, that would be an incredibly athletic secondary with Reed and Epps. I definitely think there's going to be opportunities in the offseason to upgrade safety, and I don't want to give too much to go. Gambling Hippie said, might have mentioned this, but Tom Brady officially retired this morning again. Yeah, somebody else said it a couple times. Justin Ross is projected to go where? See, that's the thing, Jalen. Everybody's all over the place with him. Some people have him going on the back end of the first. Some people have him as a second. I've seen him as far down as an early third. To Michael's point, I will save it for the wide receiver day, but I do think Justin Ross is a sneaky good player. If it wasn't for some injuries and stuff that kind of occurred, I think he would have been a lock in the first round. He had some very unfortunate events that kind of took him down, on the radar a little bit of people. I'd like Jamari Sayer from UGA. I think, let's see, I think I sent you an article. Allie wrote about him. Very versatile guy. He played all 5 alignments at Georgia between his freshman and senior year. Early on, he was playing some center, and then late in his career, he was playing, left and right tackle and guard position. I mean, the guy, he played all 5 alignments. Like, a very athletic guy. He's a dude that I think that if you're in on the offensive lineman and somehow a guy like that's in the 4th round, like, you can debate where you used your picks and what positions you use them on, but he seems like a stout guy to me. A dude that can play all 5 alignments seems like a stoutling guy to me. The Gambling Hippie said, I want to solidify the back end of our defense, safety and corner, draft or free agency. I hear you. Definitely need it. One above all said, man, I would love to get Bates. But even as cheap as the Bengals owner is, he can't let him walk. He can't be that cheap. Yeah, my gut instinct says there's no way he gets out the door. But if he does, I definitely think the Eagles should be involved. I definitely think we should be involved. If he gets out the door, the Eagles should be involved. I mean, what's the point of having all these young receivers on rookie contracts if you can't keep a guy like Bates inside of the, inside on your team? Then what was the point of all that? You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to keep Boyd and, what was his name? The kid from Clemson, the young man from Clemson, guys. He was a really good route runner too. I can't think of his name. His name slipped on my mind just because that's how good they are. But, Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. Man, what is his name from Clemson, guys? He was such a good route runner in that 2020 class. I cannot think of his name, man. I was really high on him too. But, yeah, I mean, they have just – there's no way they're going to keep all these guys. There's absolutely no way they're going to keep them all. Yeah. Higgins, T. Higgins. Thank you, Mad Hatter. T. Higgins. Yeah. There's no way they're going to keep Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase when they all come up for their contracts eventually. Somebody's going to have, the money's going to be hard. Then you got Joe Burrow will eventually come up for his contract. I think it's going to be really tough to keep all those guys in-house. But, Bates, while you got those guys on those kind of, favorable contracts, you got Burrow on a really good contract. They got, obviously Jamar Chase is on a favorable contract. T. Higgins is on a favorable contract. I don't know Boyd's deal, but, if Tyler Boyd becomes available, I'd have a ton of interest in adding Tyler Boyd here in Philadelphia. Gambling Hippie say, do you feel more confident in defensive backs or linebackers going into next year? Seems like a lot more defensive backs coming up on the end of contract versus not great but up and coming linebackers. I do think we need both. I think there's value in both. I think you can get better in free agency at both of those positions. I think defensive backs, you got to be careful. But I do think there's a couple of lower tier guys that they can't possibly get not everyone's going to get under contract. And I honestly think Steven Nelson might be destined to sign back with the Eagles. I don't think the market's going to be there. I think he's going to get paid more than the Eagles paid him, but I don't think that same market's going to be there. Thank you, Mad Hatter. It was driving me crazy. T. Higgins. Cough. If we had drafted Juan Thornhill or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Nasir Adderley, and like 3 others, we would be talking about a reasonable extension rather than asking who is going to be our safety. Cough. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Richie. Exactly. That's what I was thinking of, guy. Hunter Renfrow. You like Hunter Renfrow, Jalen? I mean, yeah, he's a kind of an elusive guy, that shorter slot guy that can get open. He said maybe you can keep chasing Higgins, but Boyd is definitely out of here. Yeah, I mean, Boyd, man, Tyler Boyd would be a really good pickup for the Eagles, man. That's a good football player that is just surrounded. Like sometimes what can you do? What can you do, man? You're just a really good football player yourself, but every dude at your position on that team is just a straight baller. And I would love to have Tyler Boyd on Philly. Sign me up right now. I take it. Boyd on the outside looking in, Jalen says. Shakira said, agree, Gate City. I'd take Tyler Boyd too. Yeah. Sign me up, man. Yes, yes, Richie. He's that 6'4" guy coming out of Clemson. There was once upon a time, Richie, he was really looked upon as being like a top 20 pick in the draft. But he just had a couple of misfortunate, incidents at Clemson that kind of it kept his production down. And now like I said, I've heard some people saying he's still going to go in the back end of the first round. Some people say not. It's a second-round guy now, just like T. Higgins was. Other people are saying that he might be like a Chase Claypool type that doesn't get taken until the early third. It's crazy value, man. If that guy's a second or a third-round pick, that's a really good football player in the second or third round. He's pretty good, man. I wouldn't mind taking Justin Ross, but I don't want to get too deep into it because that's, like I said, it's a couple more days from now is going to be the topic of the video. So I don't want to go too deep, guys. All right, y'all. We've been on here for about an hour and 18 minutes or so, guys. I'm getting ready to jump off of here. I got some stuff I got to do today. I will put another video up this evening, guys. We will talk a little bit about contracts again. Brandon Graham's got some interesting notes about his contract that I want to bring up with you guys. So obviously you can see we're working draft and we're working like contract valuation stuff. Starting next week, we're going to start working into the player evaluation side of things to where I'll start working free agencies. I'll start working the draft and doing some player profiles, just individual players in like 7 to 10 minute videos for you guys. So all that stuff is coming up, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in, man. I appreciate you guys doing this every morning. It's kind of fun to have people to talk to, y'all. And I'll see y'all later this evening, guys. Appreciate y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.